Now then, welcome back, Saddos, to... do you know what? I don't say now then properly, do I? Because what's his face? He says it more like, now then.
Does he really?
Now then.
I always thought that... Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, I'll try it again. Now then.
Go on.
Welcome. I'm going to do the whole thing like him now, aren't I? Now then, welcome back, Saddos, to another episode of the Sitcom Archive Deep Dive Overdrive. Hey, Bagum. With me, Eggs Benedict.
You sound like you're trying to be me. And me, Alison Barton-Simmons.
After that false start there, we're into it. So let's just clarify. We're balls deep into the second series of Dear John, aren't we, Al?
We are. We're up to episode 3 today. Episode
3. Series 2, episode 3, we should say, which is entitled
Yes.
Problems with Toby, and was broadcast on September the 21st, 1987.
Ooh. I enjoyed this episode.
I did. Well, it's better now that Soft Lad's gone. Tosh, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm glad that Tosh has gone. I didn't really enjoy his part in it. I'm glad that he's left us.
Yes, yeah. I enjoyed it as well, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm in a good mood tonight, Al.
Good, I'm glad.
Yeah, I don't know why. I just feel perky tonight.
Well, that's always a plus, isn't it?
Now, before we get stuck into this week's deep dive, though, people who've been listening to us a long time might recall that we put this Series 3 to the vote with members of our mailing list and in our Facebook group to see what they wanted us to deep dive. We curated a short list of 4 sitcoms. Dear John was one, Reggie Perrin was one, Ever Decreasing Circles was one, and what was the other one? I can't remember now. Doesn't matter.
Did you say Open All Hours?
No, Open All Hours was one.
Open All Hours? I don't know.
You might be right. Regardless, the 2 that were jointly top, were Dear John and Reggie Perrin, and so we picked Dear John with the intention of coming back and circling round to Reggie Perrin at a later date. Now, we included that Reggie Perrin option on the shortlist because we've spoken before about how we'd never watched it, but we felt like we'd missed something culturally important.
Yeah.
And since it came out joint top with Dear John, we've both watched it, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. I don't think it's my cup of tea.
No, I'm not mad keen either. I mean, I didn't hate it. I wouldn't go as far as to say I liked it either.
Mm.
I mean, there were funny parts. There were funny parts to it.
Yeah. It's a difficult thing, isn't it? Because when we do the podcast, we enjoy the podcast, and that was always the understanding that as long as we're enjoying ourselves while we're recording it, and it makes us happy, that's a good thing. Yeah,
it's not to be a chore, is it? Which it could possibly turn into if we deep dive every episode of Reggie Perrin. So basically, we're shafting that idea. I'm sorry for anyone who voted for it.
Yeah, sorry.
We don't think it was awful. I don't know. I think we were both agreed that it was a little bit dated, although I'm sure a lot of the ones that we look at are a little bit dated. But there was certainly some misogyny, racism, homophobia in there that's probably made me a bit more uncomfortable than usual, shall we say.
Yeah, I found it a little bit irritating.
I did like some of the magical realism in it, that it must have been very innovative. And
yes,
shows like 2.4 Children with Belinda Lang, that was heavy on fantasy sequences and things like Scrubs, and there's been others, but I can't imagine that there was many, if any, before Reggie Perrin that were doing these little flights of fancy sequences in amongst the main storyline. So, and it's not without its merits, and certainly Leonard Rossiter's a magnificent performer, so maybe we'll look at Rising Damp instead, maybe.
I think that's a plan.
Yeah, not necessarily next. We haven't really decided what's next, so you can send us suggestions as long as it's not Reggie Perrin, because we don't want
Reggie Perrin.
We don't want to do it, sorry. I didn't get where I am today by deep diving something I'm not interested in, did you, El?
That's true. That is true. It's got to be something that doesn't feel like it's an effort and that you just can't really get on board with. I think it's got to be something that you want to give time to put your feet up and watch.
On the subject of that guy, CJ, the boss, he's the most catchphrase man ever, isn't he?
Oh, heck. Is he the guy with the 5 head?
Yeah, but he says his catchphrase literally every third line. I've never known someone to overuse the catchphrase quite to the extent of CJ.
Yeah.
It's very strange. Anyway, we won't shit all over it, because if it's your favourite show, good for you.
Yeah.
So moving on from that awkward little admission that we're not going to do what was
feel
voted.
Embarrassed now. Really embarrassed.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. We should be more vigilant in future and only curate things that we've vetted first, I think.
Get overexcited, though. I get overexcited and eager to please.
Yeah, a little bit. Never mind. So last week we did some limericks, and they were hit and miss, mostly miss. But we invited listeners to send us some of their own, and we've got a few. Gareth, our friend from the British Sitcom History podcast, he sent us a couple. Do you want to read them out, Al? They're brilliant.
I will. These are great. The one-to-one club has its gits, but none more than Kirk St. Moritz. He's not got much tact, but his suits have impact. It's just the kind of guy that he is.
Fantastic. Well done, Gareth.
Like that.
Love that one.
And his second one, Kirk is as rude as can be, even when he's not taking the pee. He's the brains of a fetus. All right, Mrs. Boyd Peters, you can have that one on me. Excellent.
Brilliant construction. He's a bit obsessed with Kirk, though, isn't he? Both about Kirk.
Well, who's not?
That's true. We also got two brilliant ones from our regular SADDO who listens to all our episodes, Lisa. She sent us a couple, and they're really good. The first one was about Kirk. Here we go. A fellow in fashion outmoded cried out as a bottom exploded. Hey, Mrs. Boyd P., have that one on me, and grinned as the party imploded.
That's brilliant.
So much better than ours, aren't they? I have to admit.
That's fab.
And the other one from Lisa. There was a game dame named Louise who set divorced folk at their ease with discos and parties, disrupted by farties, while probing for marital sleaze.
Excellent. Well done, Lisa.
Yes. Next time we do limericks, we should just invite both those guys to guest.
Yes, just yeah, that's it. Perfect.
Now, before we get properly started, would you like to hear a clip of Jean Challis on the radio in 1977?
Yes, I would.
Nine minutes to 1 it is, and young Ray Moore hasn't seen fit to get back to the studio yet. I think he's gone round the back with the band to have a couple of the old brandies, you know. No doubt he'll come staggering in here in a little while. Anyway,
No
Ray
way.
will be back to join with me just as soon as they can get back up, fighting through the crowds that are milling about in London's West End tonight, of course. Speaking of turning on, which we were, because that was what that last tune was called, there are various parties going on, and I've got some greetings for people who are raising glasses down in Andover to start with. This is everybody at the party at Philip's house, is it? Jane, Nick, Dave, Simon, John, Helen, Anna, Erica, Caroline and Andy. Happy New Year to you from Philip Morgan. Well, indeed, it is Philip's house down in Andover. Hope you got a house when you wake up tomorrow morning, Philip, still. And Chris and Jim wish all friends and relations at 45 Fairfield Road, West Drayton. Great time to you at the party that's going on there.
Yeah, wasn't that amazing?
I can't believe it. That's not how I pictured her voice to be.
No, but when you think about it, 70s BBC radio, it kind of makes sense that she's so beautifully spoken, doesn't it?
Absolutely. What a gorgeous voice.
Yes, so she was, I forgot, I haven't written it down, but she was the presenter of a really long-running show that was on for 35 years.
Okay.
Family requests, I can't remember now, sorry. But it was a show that started just after the war and was something where families could request songs that could be played for their brother or husband who was serving away with the army.
Oh.
So it was like, shared connections, so dedicate this song to you type thing. And she was the last presenter of it in the 70s before it finally finished after about 35 years.
Oh, well, that's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah.
I very sort of like syrupy honey and loveliness, isn't it? I like that.
Yeah, very soothing, yeah.
Soothing, yeah.
And any acting role I've ever seen her in, she's more aligned to Mrs Arnott than she is Radio 4.
Yeah.
Her proper voice. Yeah, she's obviously got a voice for every occasion, I guess.
Clever lady. Talented.
Shall we get stuck into this episode then and have a look at Problems with Toby, Series 2, Episode 3 of Dear John?
Indeed, let's do that.
Dear John, dear John, by the time you read these lines, I'll be gone. It's all been said and done, dear John. Seems we've sung love's last song, dear John.
So the first thing is, do you know what I noticed? Oh, I went real high there, didn't I?
Did you know what? What did you notice, Ben?
I noticed for the first time that the newspaper on this new credits at the start
Right.
actually has the suburb of London where they live in.
Okay.
It says Uxbridge and a phone number at the bottom.
Did you ring it?
I didn't really know because the numbers have all changed since then, haven't they?
Is it like 3 digits?
Yeah. But no, I didn't try and place an ad. I just noticed they were in Uxbridge, which is northwest London.
Okay.
Quite a nice area, I believe, but probably not
Yeah.
not as nice as Surbiton in the southwest. But there we go. A good 50-minute commute from Surbiton to Uxbridge, according to Google Maps these days. Why I looked that up, I have no idea. I have no intention of making that journey. But no, there we go. So that was his paper, the Uxbridge Times or whatever.
Yeah.
Actually, that reminds me of that old... do you remember that old Frank Skinner joke about the newspaper in Smethwick?
No.
Well, it wasn't so much a joke as something he overheard in a pub, I think. He said he was in a pub and a bloke was reading the Smethwick local newspaper, which is called the Smethwick Telephone. And the guy, who was a stranger to the area, was trying to make conversation and said, "Why do they call it the Smethwick Telephone?" And the bloke went, "Because it's from Smethwick." Which is the best answer ever, isn't it?
Oh.
What's your local paper called? Ben?
Just the Bolton News now. It was the Bolton Evening News, but they put it out that early that it was they had to remove the word evening. So it comes out first thing in the morning.
It's
now.
just the bun.
The bun, not the ben, yeah.
Which sounds a bit more Blackburn, really, doesn't it? It's the bun.
Bun, yeah. But a lot of the stuff goes online now anyway. It's like a bit of it's more like a pamphlet now as opposed to the
print industry's dying, isn't it?
It is.
I remember I was really disappointed when I found out that the Newcastle upon Tyne local paper isn't called the Tyne Daily. Because that would have been a brilliant name for it, wouldn't it? Anyway, I'm digressing again. Anyway, let's get stuck in. So, the episode starts with John multitasking.
Oh, weird multitasking.
Big time. Because he's ironing and he's marking books and he's monologuing out loud.
Jeez. It's all going on, isn't it?
3 things I've never done at the same time. I don't know about you.
No. The marking books thing while he was ironing in his underpants just made me remember that teachers are real people. Because when you're a kid, you just think that teachers, that's all they do. They just teach in school and then they don't really have any kind of life beyond that. And there he was, ironing and marking books. You don't really think about him marking your books.
No.
And being like, sat with a glass of wine in front of Corrie, which is probably what a lot of them do.
In my experience, it's exactly what they do, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, doing it in your ironing and marking books and monologuing. And laughing at the kids' work.
Yeah, to no one, because he's on his own. A bit worried about his mental health, really. I think he's falling apart a little bit.
Well, Mrs Lemensky's she's got it covered. She's listening to him at the door and says, "Crazy man, he ought to be in a nut bin." She's ace, isn't she? I love her.
Nut bin made me laugh.
Yeah.
And then the phone rings, doesn't it? So Mrs Lemensky answers it. And it turns out it's for John. So she's knocking at the door shouting, "Madman, there's a telephone for you."
Oh.
But of course, John can't cope with adding a 4th thing to his multitasking activities. So he asks Mrs Lemensky to take a message. But then he twigs that Mrs Lemensky had said, "I'll tell her."
Oh no, it's a woman.
It's a woman, and he gets pathetically, ridiculously excited about the fact that there's a woman on the phone for him, and he's shouting, "It's a woman, thank you, God." Sad, isn't it?
It is. And then when he tries to put his hot trousers on.
Yeah, he urgently pulls those kecks on and dives out into the lobby with his flies open, yelping with pain, doesn't he? And sort of squirting water onto his crotch from his ironing.
Mrs Lemensky really makes me laugh here, because when she spots him doing that, she says, "You crazy man, you spray water over your willy."
It's all in the delivery as well, isn't it?
I think she's fab.
I like her. She was in an episode of Auf Wiedersehen, Pet, you know.
Was she?
Speaking German. I think she's Austrian rather than German.
Yeah.
I'll have to see if I can dig it out and share it. So John explains that his trousers are burning hot as he'd just been ironing them, and Mrs. Lemensky says, "Have you got no brains? You should take them off first." It's a strong opening, this scene, isn't it?
It is.
John, he takes the phone and you can see him like winding himself up, trying to act all suave and sort of like wobbling his head all cocky, getting himself in the zone. And then he says, "Hi, John Lacey here."
Ooh, straight away I'd have put the phone down.
Yeah, ugh. But of course, it's just evil Wendy, isn't it?
Oh, bad Wendy.
So John asks how Toby is and if he's looking forward to his birthday party, but Wendy's sort of reticent to say how Toby is, and she's clearly a bit kind of perturbed by something or other.
Yeah, there's something bothering her.
Yeah, and then John, out of courtesy, he asks how Mike is, and Wendy says he's fine. But then Wendy confesses that she's worried about him, obviously meaning Toby. But she says he's moody and withdrawn, and she doesn't know what to do. But of course, because it's a sitcom, the misunderstanding ensues, and John assumes Wendy's talking now about Mike and asking his advice. And he's like,
yeah,
she's got a cheek, she's got some gall, telling me all about Mike being...
It's caught with a moody bit on the side.
Yeah, a moody fake Welshman. But when she says he wet the bed the other night, John's initially saying, "Oh, did he have a skinful?" But
Was he drunk?
Yeah, he quickly realises they're talking cross purposes. And she's calling him because there are, open quotes, problems with Toby, close quotes.
Yeah.
Obvious, really, but there you go. Typical sitcom mix-up. And Toby's teacher has been consulted, and he seems apparently to get more miserable the closer to the weekend he gets. So Wendy, perhaps logically and understandably, wonders if it's having to see his dad at the weekend that's actually getting him down, which is a low blow to John, but you can kind of see Wendy's logic, can't you?
Yeah, but I just feel that she would have taken a lot of joy from that. Oh, he doesn't want to go and see his dad, so...
But she does say, "I'm not saying this to hurt you, I'm just worried about Toby." I know that we don't like Wendy, but it does seem, I'm taking her at face value on this scene. She just seems preoccupied with her son, as a good mother should be.
Rather than being a dick.
Yeah, don't worry, she'll be a dick in another episode.
Yeah.
So she actually asked John if he maybe doesn't see Toby for a couple of weekends.
Oh.
And it's difficult, and John says, "Well, Toby loves his time with me, and we go to the park and we play rugby and everything." It's a difficult situation for them both, but John has this idea of hiring this sort of fella he seems to vaguely know from the top floor, who's a clown/children's entertainer.
Yeah, that's got a really good afternoon written all over it, hasn't it? Let's hire the man from the top floor of the bedsit where I live.
Yeah.
To be Chuckles the clown.
It's got peado vibes all over it, hasn't it?
Yeah. Oh.
I kind of imagined him to look like Mr. Jelly from Psychoville, Reece Shearsmith's character.
Oh, right, okay, yeah,
So
yeah.
A really inappropriate looking clown who's just going to make the kids cry.
Oh, dear.
But at this point, we cut to the club, and Billy Bullshit Kirk is in full flow.
Yeah, he is.
Talking about the paddy field being a burning lake of napalm.
Yeah. Very graphic, what he's talking about, isn't it? About blood and bones and things.
Yeah, he can spin a tale all right. I mean, it doesn't stack up if you examine it too closely, but...
But they're all a bit bored,
they're definitely bored. They're either mocking him openly or just dozing off from the, repetitive bullshit they're having to listen to.
Yeah.
I realised I'd have to go and get some help. So I laid him down and I said, "You rest, buddy. Have a long rest."
You laid him down in a paddy field. That means his head was 3 foot underwater.
Wise up, Tiger. I gave him some bamboo.
Was he planning to make a magazine rack while you were away?
You stick the bamboo in your mouth and breathe through it like a snorkel. I staggered through the flames to the water's edge. I turned and I said, "I'll be back for you, Wang."
Wang!
It was a South Vietnamese commando case.
Yeah, they're called Wang and Ching and things like that.
Well, how could he hear? He was 3 feet underwater.
He most probably had other bits of bamboo stuck in his ears as well.
And they're all mocking him, but Kirk says they will never know the hell we call Nam.
Debenham.
Yeah,
That's the nearest he's got to Nam.
that should have been Kate's line, shouldn't it? Because when you think about it, Britain didn't even fight in Vietnam.
Yeah. Why would he have been there?
Harold Wilson, he refused to send military back into the Americans, and there was sort of, whereas, oh yeah, it's not a history podcast, is it, Ben? Shut up. But Sylvia arrives with her customary annoying laugh, and I think Louise takes that opportunity to shut Kirk up here at this point.
Yes.
Kate makes one of her barbed remarks, and Kirk says, "Okay, Tiger, how is the frigid situation these days?"
Yeah. Why? Why do that?
Arsehole.
Yeah, a little bit.
Louise at this point cajoles Sylvia into telling the Friday night group her backstory, which is much to Sylvia's chagrin because she says, "Look, I've told this umpteen times and I find it very difficult." But Louise loves making her tell this tale over and over again, and it's clear why, because she whispers to Kate and John out the corner of her mouth, "Wait till you hear this one, it's a corker."
Oh, it's awful, isn't it, what she does?
This is where it gets awkward by today's standards, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
This story.
Yes, it does.
Very much a #different-time situation. So we learn that Sylvia was married to George for 12 years and they had 2 children. And they lived happily in Sudbury and went to clubs and they attended Latin American ballroom dancing and all was pleasant and well. But she's not going fast enough for Louise. She wanted to get to the juicy bit because she's a vampire. Apparently what happened was Sylvia came home from late night shopping one Thursday. Another reference to late night shopping in the 80s, which we've already covered.
Yeah.
And when she went in, she couldn't find George despite his Montego being parked on the drive. But what she did find in her bedroom was a woman sitting at her dressing table putting on her makeup.
Yes.
Ralph says, "How odd." And I guess the audience here naturally assume an affair is ensuing between George and whoever's sat at Sylvia's dressing table. But when Ralph asks where George was, Sylvia says, "Sitting at my dressing table putting on makeup," delivering the punchline that George was a cross-dresser at minimum, I guess.
Yeah.
And John's wincing at this revelation because John's, an empathetic guy. And the others just don't seem to be able to wrap their heads around it at all, do they?
No, it seemed like a bigger thing than they could even contemplate.
Yeah, I think eventually Kirk kind of twigs what's going on and he just cruelly starts laughing his head off and he says to Ralph, "Georgie boy was a sissy."
Yeah, which I found really odd. And I know it's #different times and last week's very sort of progressive stuff with regards to safe sex and AIDS. This obviously it wasn't on the same radar at the same time, I don't think, was it?
Well, ultimately, one guy wrote it, so I guess it reflects his... there may well have been people who were more sympathetic to cross-dressers. Not in my experience of the 80s, there wasn't. But
no.
I think it's more something that's made developments in latter-day times.
Yes.
So John asks what Sylvia did at this point. And this just shows what a vampire that Louise is, because she's mouthing the words along with Sylvia.
Yeah, so she's heard this story so many times that she knows what comes next. It's ghoulish, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah, it's like she's listening to her favourite record and she's delighting in the suffering of this poor woman. Because she's really upset, Sylvia.
She is.
And Sylvia says George told her he felt like a woman trapped in a man's body. And then more hysterics from Kirk, who just finds the whole thing hysterical. And after that, George came out of the closet, gave away all his clothes and bought an entirely new women's wardrobe. Louise is delirious with excitement at this revelation. She's looking around to see everyone's reaction. But John, being John, he just says, "Oh, how did it affect the kids?"
Yeah.
Asking the questions that you would expect from a supportive encounter group.
Tact.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sylvia says they suffered derision and mockery at school, which does not surprise me, this being the 1980s.
John then says, "Well, you should have told the teachers." And Sylvia adds that she did and then they stopped.
Yeah.
Which is, you can sort of believe that kind of.
Well, it almost misses the mark, that, because it's not explicit that it was the teachers making the jokes, but it did sort of land in a way that the Vietnam remark by Kirk didn't land, because I would have thought people would be laughing at how ridiculous him saying, "Well, that's what we called Nam," when
Yeah.
surely everyone knew that Britain weren't in Vietnam.
Weren't even part of it, yeah.
There's a great gag here, though, in amongst all of this kind of like inappropriate stuff.
So how did the cats at the scuba diving club cope with having a transvestite as a member?
He had to resign. George's own fault, really. Instead of telling them the truth and allowing them time to get used to the idea, he just turned up one evening wearing my one-piece Halton X swimsuit. Too much. Too soon, you see.
He was a fat chap as well, wasn't he? I never understood how he managed to squeeze into it.
It had adjustable sides.
Oh.
What about the ballroom?
Sorry, Ralph.
The Latin American formations. Were they more understanding?
It was brilliant. Oh, his face as well. He was so
Deadpan,
just
wasn't
obviously honest with what he was asking. It was such a really good joke.
But that's a callback, in case you miss it, to the reference to them both being ballroom dancers.
Ballroom dancers.
A couple of minutes earlier.
What about the ballroom? Brilliant.
What Ralph's asking is how did they all react to George's changing appearance? But it's such a great punchline. Sylvia finds the whole thing very difficult, and she's weeping, and she says, "Maybe I wasn't a real woman," and Kurt cruelly says, "Well, that makes two of you."
Oh.
And then she says quite a profound line at the end of this tale. She says, "What can you do when somebody doesn't need you? You can't hold on to them. There's nothing to hold on to."
Yeah.
True.
And then Louise jumps up and just carries on. She doesn't even acknowledge or thank Sylvia for telling the group or sharing her story. She just jumps up like nothing's happened. It's a really... it made me feel uncomfortable.
Well, she's just moving on to any other business, which is we're all having a shindig at the Italian restaurant.
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, John's got Toby's birthday party on the Sunday, which Louise has booked the restaurant. So I'm thinking, maybe can't meet. I'm worried about John's diary at this point.
When's he going to get there?
Yeah. I'm like, bloody hell, John, you better get your filer fax out because it is the 80s.
Filer fax. From W.H. Smith's.
Of course, filer fax was the subject of a gag in Fools and Horses that he wrote as well, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Didn't think of that.
Yeah.
So it cuts to John, and he's with Toby, and they're chatting outside the cafe. And John's bought a coffee and an ice cream for Toby. And Toby sat there, and he's really quite introverted, isn't he?
Mm.
He doesn't look like a happy little boy. But nevertheless, the relationship between him and John is very naturalistic again, as we talked about before, no doubt due to the sort of father-son dynamic between the actors, Bates, Will and Ralph.
I think he's a good little actor as well. He's some kids you just think, you're not even believable as a kid. And you are a kid.
Yeah.
But I think he's a really good little actor. He's a believable character.
Yeah. When you say that, did you have someone in mind?
What, as a kid that can't act?
Yeah, because my mind always goes to the same kid.
Go on.
Emma Watson in the early Harry Potter films. She grew into it, to be fair, but she was fucking abysmal in them early ones.
There's a lot of wooden kids that I think Daniel Radcliffe as Harry Potter. I don't get why he was cast. I just think he was wooden.
No, he's not got much better either, to be fair. There are a few of them, but no, Will Bates does a good job.
But he's really good, yeah.
And John suggests a bit of rugby practice and produces a ball from nowhere. And Toby, he looks totally nonplussed. He says, "Well, my legs are aching from playing rugby with Mike this morning," which is one of those it kicks in the balls to John again.
Literally, yeah.
And John gives Toby this rugby ball as his present. And again, Will Bates is doing a good job here of balancing being grateful to his dad and saying thank you while still underwhelmed and vaguely kind of discombobulated with life.
Yeah.
There's something troubling him. And he says to John, "Now I'm 9, I'm not a child anymore."
He's cute.
"So I'm not going to be kissing you anymore." It's always a bit of a heartbreaking moment, that, isn't it? When your kids don't want to hold your hand or kiss you at the gates. Yeah. Oh. John tries to get to the crux of what's up with Toby, and he's encouraging Toby to talk things through rather than bury his feelings. And he says, "I'm a good listener. I had lots of practice when I was married to your mum." I bet he did. And Toby looks like he's going to open up, but then he backs out and he says, "Oh, I'm all right, I'm all right." And it's quite moving now because you get John giving Toby some really strong fatherly advice. He says, "Don't hide from people or be ashamed to tell people that you're afraid or worried. And promise me you'll never hide from people."
Quite poignant, isn't it? It's quite lovely, that.
It is poignant, and you've got to wonder if, in latter years, if indeed Will Bates chose to rewatch Dear John, whether that was painful to watch because of losing his dad so young.
Yeah.
Because it's really kind of tender moment between the two characters, isn't it?
It is. It is. It's lovely.
It's all an example, I think, of John Sullivan's talent for interlacing tender and emotional scenes with his comedy, which we talked about before. He was brilliant at it.
Absolutely. And this is a great setup for the next bit. Because while you're in the midst of all the sort of empathic relationship between father and son, then in the distance, who do we see running towards them?
Yep. Kirk is jogging along in a Dire Straits headband with sunnies and a Walkman, and randomly clicking his fingers at women as he jigs past them, isn't he?
He's got his trackies tucked into some long socks as well, more of which I will talk about later. But yeah,
But it's brilliant because he's turned it on a sixpence. It was really tender and emotional, and then there's this great gag of this fucking moron coming along.
And they duck under the table, which I loved. The fact that you shouldn't hide from people, son, and there they are under the table.
He justifies it, doesn't he, by saying, "This is an emergency." But Kirk clocks them straight away. He comes over, he says, "What are you doing down there?" And Toby says, "We're hiding from one of Daddy's friends."
But Kirk's got no idea. Kirk has no idea that friend is him.
Because he's got no self-awareness, has he? So he's just looking around thinking, "Ooh, ooh."
Who is it? Who is it? Exactly. The thing is, like, with people like that, if you think that you don't know someone like that, it's because it's you.
It's you, yeah.
You are that person.
Yeah. Thankfully, I know many people like that. Could also still be me, I suppose.
I don't think so.
Did you notice the bulge of Kirk's knob in all of this clobber? It's rather visible.
No, I didn't.
Well, that's probably for the best. His knob's at eye level with Toby, and it's he's bulging in his tight jogging shorts. I was thinking, poor kid.
Oh dear. I bet it was a sock rolled up. I don't think that was real then. You know what he's like? I think he would have had something tucked in his underpants to make his willy look bigger.
Yeah, possibly so. Possibly what inspired that character in Only Fools and Horses, the singer who had stuff tucked into his kegs.
Yeah.
I thought that I was over you. But tell me now, what can I do? I love you even more than I did. But darling, what can I do? You just love me, and I'll always be. Come
Kirk says, "Who's a spooky little kid?" And John introduces them, albeit reluctantly. And Toby's quite impressed, isn't he? Because John says Kirk's a spy.
Yes.
And he's asking Kirk about it. And then John says, "Look, I'm taking my son out for the day. Just the two of us, alone, no one else." So obviously Kirk says, "Oh, I'll join you."
Oh, of course he does. Just no self-awareness.
Clearly, Toby is naively very impressed with Kirk and his bullshit, his bravado about spying and everything. And he excitedly runs off with Kirk to throw stones at model boats.
Throw stones? Oh, my goodness.
I'd like to hope John stopped that before it went too far.
You're a lunatic person. They should put you in a home for fruitcase people.
So then we cut to the Italian restaurant where the rest of the one-to-one club are busy enjoying their starters at this point.
Yeah, John has to rock up late, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Because there's been an incident between Kirk and the clown. Kirk ended up at the birthday party and really made me laugh. and then there ended up being a fight between the two of them.
Yeah, John tells Kate that the birthday party was an unmitigated disaster. But the gag at first is that there was a fight, and I think Sylvia says, well, kids they'll be best friends tomorrow. You know what kids are like.
Yeah.
And that's when the reveal is that it was actually Kirk, because Toby's invited him, and Kirk stomps in, doesn't he, with like bits of string and a balloon and a party bag.
Yeah.
He says, I didn't start it, to John straight away. And Louise says to John, she's incredulous that he would have invited Kirk, but of course it was Toby, because he's excited by all these tales of dare doing and everything. But it transpires Kirk hit the other guy because he sprayed water at him. But of course the other guy was Mr. Jolly from the bedsit upstairs that John hired doing his clown thing. And Kirk hadn't realised this, which was his excuse.
Why did you hit him?
He sprayed water at me.
He was a clown.
And I was supposed to know that.
Didn't he have a red nose?
Eventually. He wore multicoloured boots, makeup and a curly wig.
Well, so does her old man.
What's weird at this point is that Louise is like, rather than having her own starters, she's supervising the eating of the starters by wandering around with a clipboard. Have a day off, Louise.
I didn't spot that. Really?
Yeah.
What an odd thing to do.
She's still got a clipboard. She's wandering around checking everyone's enjoying themselves. And I thought, I'll treat yourself, Louise.
Yeah, sit down. Have some soup.
John didn't manage to find out what was bugging Toby, but Toby did ask him not to take him out for the next few Sundays.
Oh, that's sad, isn't it?
And John's more than a tad heartbroken at this, and he's very upset. Kurt doesn't know what he's done wrong, so he's already in John's bad books.
Mm.
But John actually loses his rag with all of them for telling him it's something he's going to have to live with. And I can kind of understand, because they don't have that problem, any of them.
Yeah.
And they can't necessarily relate to it without kids of their own. But he goes a bit far by telling them, you don't know anything about it, you don't have kids. And Louise particularly is upset.
Well, you certainly know how to hit below the belt. I wanted to have children, but I couldn't have them. And you know why. It wasn't my fault. And yet the first chance you get, you throw my husband's vein in my face.
It's quite the image. It's a bit like my friend's varicose vein, isn't it?
It is.
John then snaps at both Ralph, who's waxing lyrically about the loyalty of terrapins. And
his terrapins!
Yeah, he loves his terrapins. And he also snaps at Sylvia for comparing Toby's refusal to see John with her own kids' reluctance to see their dad. And John says, I don't take my boy out dressed up like Tootsie, which I know I shouldn't laugh at, but it was pretty funny line.
Yeah.
Because I like that movie. You wouldn't get away with showing it now, would you? Tootsie.
Don't think so, no. That reminds me of going to the video shop when I was little. I used to love the picture on the cover of Dustin Hoffman dressed up as Tootsie with the red dress on.
He made quite a convincing woman of that type, I thought, Dustin Hoffman.
I was years older before I realised that was a male actor dressed up as a lady.
Mm. There is quite a bit of pathos to that movie, and maybe you would get away with showing it because of some of the lessons in it. I don't know. You wouldn't get away with making it, certainly. Maybe you get away.
No.
You know, in this age, it would be, well, only a trans person can play a trans role.
Can play it. Mm.
Kirk says to John, go boil your head.
Yeah.
And the night's ruined, and we cut to John picking up Toby from school, presumably Monday morning the following day.
It was quite soon after as well, because Toby had said, I don't want to sort of see you at weekends. I don't want you to come and pick me up. And he's there. It's like only like 2 days after, and there's John.
Yeah, he's clearly just trying to force the issue and find out what's wrong with him, rather than just stay away. And you can understand he's got not much else in his life, is he? He doesn't want to listen to Ralph going on about terrapins all the time.
I think Wendy's car's broken down as well, so John's like stepped in to help out. So that on the way home from school, John kneels down to talk to Toby and asks him to explain why he doesn't want to see him, because I think he's got a right to know, and he's obviously really worried. He doesn't want this relationship to break down because they're no longer living in like a house together as a family. And Toby admits at this point that the reason why he doesn't want to see his dad is because he doesn't like rugby.
That was it all
really
along,
interesting.
Wasn't it?
It was rugby all along. But John says that he doesn't like it either. But he thought that Toby did, so he was trying to really make an effort. And I think the mic and the rugby thing is obviously playing on John's mind, isn't it? He doesn't want to.
He wants to
doesn't
compete,
want this
doesn't
guy
he?
that's just. Yeah, it's a competition between John and Mike, really. So John thought that to compete, he would have to sort of up his rugby to keep Toby on side. But Toby doesn't like rugby. He didn't want to hurt his dad's feelings, which is quite cute. But John says that Toby's his best mate. And they both like soccer. Why they called it soccer, and I don't know. It's football, isn't it?
And then they did a kind of cringy little jump in the air together.
I love the jump. I thought the jump was really cute. They do a bit of a chant, don't they? Which I thought was really sweet. And then they both jump in the air and it ends mid-shot with him in the air, which I quite liked.
It's a bit of a Jossie's Giant thing, wasn't it?
It isn't, yeah, it was. It was. I loved it. I loved the ending. And I was so glad because it sort of came full circle for John. I think just knowing that your son still likes you, he wasn't really bothered about much else. He just wanted to be liked by his son and needed and wanted by his son. And he got that at the end, which I was really pleased about.
Yeah, it was a nice feel-good ending.
It was.
Seems we've sung love's last song.
So, was there anything else from that episode you wanted to talk about? I had one thing that I wanted to ask.
Oh, go on.
Who's that rando sat next to Louise with the tash? You clock him?
No, that was under the radar. What, at their table?
Yeah. I mean, they've cleverly shot it, and we know it's a Monday, Wednesday, Friday night.
Is it a mixture?
Yeah, and they've cleverly shot it, except at one point you get an angle where Louise is sat right next to this guy who's clearly just like watching the conversation take place. It's too close
but
to be ignored.
No part in it.
Yeah, he's just a guy with a tash who's just sort of watching this argument take place passively, and it's a bit weird.
Well, it worked on me because he was obviously there for filler, and I took no notice of him. So
Yeah.
But no, I didn't spot him.
Perhaps others didn't either, but for me, I was just suddenly like, "Who's this chancer with Louise?"
Could you not stop staring at him once you'd spotted him either?
Well, he was a bit. He was very 1980s looking.
Right.
I'll put a screenshot up on social media.
Yeah.
Yeah, he sticks out like a sore thumb.
Okay.
Talking of things that stuck out like a sore thumb, I've got a couple of bric-a-bracs.
Oh, go on.
The boxes of crisps in the cafe where John gets his coffee and his ice cream. Did you see them?
Okay. What were they?
Well, this is it. I couldn't tell what it is. It's really frustrating. I wanted to see what they were, but they were enticing because they were those type of boxes, with the hole that live on a shelf.
Yeah.
Reams of them.
Wall of crisps.
Wall of crisps.
The wall of crisps.
Like the wall of fags in The Good Life that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also the wheels on the wall in the restaurant. That was very in vogue. There was big wheels on every spare bit of wall, like almost like Roman wheel type thing.
Right.
Which, again, not necessarily 80s. I would say you saw a lot of that in the 90s, and then it led on to stupid things like people putting bikes on walls and shit like that.
Yeah, near us there's a pub/restaurant. In fact, last time you came over, we went there, just down the road from us.
Yeah.
And they've got a bike on the wall there. And I think it's got letters, to make it into the word food.
What? You're spelling out the word food with bikes?
No, just one bike.
Right.
That's the double O. And then there's an F at the beginning and a D at the end with a bike.
What's that made of? A climbing frame?
It's one of them restaurants where they bring you food in, like, random, like, mess tins and things. It bothers me a bit.
Yeah. Good food, though. I remember that, actually.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, should we give them a plug? What are they called?
It's the Railway in Bromley Cross.
Yep, right by the station.
It is. With a bike on the wall.
Did you get any bric-a-brac, or should we just move on to MVP?
George's Montego in the drive.
Oh, yeah, that's of its time.
We don't see it, but it's mentioned. Just the fact that it was a Montego, it just made me go, God, yeah, you don't hear about Montegos anymore, do you?
Do you know, because obviously, as we established earlier, I'm a football fan. In the 90s, the Arsenal fans used to sing, "My old man's got a Ford Sierra. He bought it off of Pat Vieira." And I used to think to myself, no one's got a Ford Sierra in 1998.
No, to me, that's like a late 80s thing.
Definitely. You wouldn't see a Ford Sierra then. It's like you don't see any Ford Escorts anymore.
There's a dad from school, one of my daughter's school, one of the dads, I think he must deal in 80s and 90s cars. So every so often he'll turn up in like a Sierra or a Cortina.
Mm.
And I quite like it. I quite like it as they drive off, and it's like so noisy and just looks out of place. It just looks totally out of place, but I do quite like it.
He's sourcing leaded petrol directly from Shell, is he? Just to make it run.
Yeah, he's putting 4-star in it.
He's got a choke and everything. I lament the demise of the choke, because it led to that great joke when someone drops one and you can go, just give it a bit more choke. You'll get there.
Oh, I used to flood my car. I had my first ever car was a Fiat Panda that couldn't even on the loveliest summer day, it couldn't cope without having the choke pulled fully out. And then I'd forget and just set off, and then it'd just die because I'd just flooded the engine.
Yeah. They don't know how easy they've got it, do they? I mean, turning around a corner used to give you like a whiplash situation, didn't it? Before power steering came in.
Yeah.
My oldest now, he's passed his test a few years ago, didn't even bother learning to drive manual. Just got automatic licence.
Just got an automatic.
Yeah, and he probably never will have to drive manual.
There is something a lot more straightforward about driving an automatic, but I like the control of a stick.
I do. I mean, I said to him, you're only licensed to drive a Dodgem, really. I don't consider it proper driving.
Yeah, it's like a Mario Kart, isn't it? I thought I had another bric-a-brac, but I don't.
Oh, okay.
Maybe that was my only bric-a-brac. I can't find it.
So there's a lot of fashions on show in this one, with them all going out for a fancy meal. So I'm sure you got lots to talk about. Not least Kirk in his awful jogging clothes. So let's have a trip over to Fashion Corner.
Whatever happened to those clothes we wore? It seems we never wear those clothes no more. Fashion code.
As I've mentioned in previous episodes, we're getting quite a revisit on a week-to-week basis of some of the fashions, although there are quite a few new items on display in this fashion corner. First of all, though, special mention to Mrs Lemensky in her navy blue patterned overall. She seems to put this on quite a lot. I wonder if do you think she works? Or do you think she just stays in and potters about all the time?
Well, she'd have been in her 70s, yeah.
Do you think? So maybe the character's been retired. I bet she's had some kind of job, like in a mill or sew. I can picture her sewing, like in a big room full of other women sewing, that kind of job.
Yeah.
But it's more like the pattern that you find on it is more reminiscent of earlier styles, like maybe the 50s or the 60s. But I think perhaps you're not supposed to believe that she's up to date and trendy. I think she's just quite a dated older lady. Wendy, we see in a patterned green and pink t-shirt dress with a belted waist, and I've seen a lot of these t-shirt dresses recently, but these are something that have made a comeback. T-shirt dresses with like a nipped in waist, made out of like the t-shirt material.
Right.
Louise, we see her in a Cadbury purple top and skirt with 3/4 length sleeves on the shirt, and with like a 10 denier purple tights on as well, so matching tights in the same colour as the outfit, which is full on. She looks like a twirl bar.
Twirl bar. A Spira would be more appropriate.
A Spira. She's like a Spira. Oh, Spira. Oh, I loved a Spira. You could drink hot chocolate through a Spira.
Could you? Well,
yeah,
God,
because it was
wish
like
I bloody
straw.
could. I'd love to go back and drink a hot chocolate through a Spira.
Through a Spira. Oof. Not much you can do it through now.
Try doing that with a flake and you'll just end up with mess everywhere, wouldn't you?
No, just mush. And we later see her in like an animal print long cardigan at the restaurant over a black outfit underneath. The print that the jacket is quite reminiscent of the era, although it wouldn't look daft now. I think this sort of animal print thing is back, so she doesn't really look dated in what she's wearing, and it had a long waterfall collar down the front as well. Kirk, at the start of the episode, is dressed in what at first I thought was sort of circa 1993 Manchester United away kit.
Oh yeah, with
and
a
it
badge.
wasn't.
I know what you mean.
It was like a Chinese logoed silken jacket with like a motif and emblems all over it. I can imagine that would be something that you'd be able to buy in, like, I don't know, like a super dry kind of jacket. So quite not an off-trend thing for 2022, I don't think.
Well, do you know what it reminded me of?
What?
Well, two things. One was like the type of gear that people wear sometimes at the Formula One, who are in the pit stops and stuff.
All right.
But also, I'm sure Lister had a jacket exactly like that in Red Dwarf.
Okay.
Around the first two series, which is kind of like broadcast at the same time as this, really. So maybe they were just in vogue. I mean, I don't mean in vogue in like 200 million years in the future. I mean, at the time of filming.
Yes, yeah. It was. I quite liked it though. I quite liked that jacket. However, he lets himself down later on in the park in his running gear. He's got like a running white vest top on, and it's got. Here's my other bric-a-brac. I knew I had another bric-a-brac. The front of the white vest top had sub 4 written on it in like a digital font. Like a calculator kind of style writing, which you don't see very often now, but I can imagine at the time it was quite trendy and modern looking.
Very Tron.
Yeah. Sky blue nylon tracksuit bottoms tucked into his long white socks. He also had like a Walkman around his waist and shades on and a sweatband. And
Bloody hell.
I've written here, Dick Turpin trainers.
I've no idea what that means. Did Dick Turpin wear trainers?
No, but they look like Dick Turpin shoes. But on closer inspection, it was them trainers. You might have worn them when you were doing like football training at primary school or high school. They had like a really big flap over the front that came over the laces. You don't see them anymore.
I remember them. I don't think I owned any. But
they look like Dick Turpin shoes, you know, like with a buckle on the front. I got a bit confused. So they weren't Dick Turpin trainers. They were the ones with like the flappy bit over the laces. So it did look it looks quite dated now, what he had on. But I think that what Kurt was going for was like ultra modern looking sportsman.
And failing.
Yeah, big time. But with the Walkman around his waist on a belt as well, that's very of the time, isn't it? Kate, we see dressed in a peach long-sleeved t-shirt dress with a belt. Again, the style that I mentioned previously that Wendy was wearing. Looks like kind of calf length. I remember my mum having dresses like this, like just long-sleeved t-shirt dresses. Sylvia is dressed in the meeting in a green and blue leaf print dress with short-sleeved, mid-calf length, nipped in at the waist. Quite a pretty dress, really, and something that print I think you would see. You see it in modern shops on the high street.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It didn't look like it was out of place.
No, not at all. There's quite a lot of this fashion that is very reminiscent of now. It doesn't feel very dated. The men seem to be dated more than the women, to be honest. But yeah, so that's the roundup for this week.
I've got a couple there.
Go on.
I didn't like that thing around Kate's neck that she had at the dinner. She always seems to have big, bulky, bloody prominent things around her neck. Not chokers, but like she's fucking St. Bernard or something. She's got a big something.
A big thing, yeah. But I think that was of the time. It wasn't like delicate jewellery. It was like really big chunky, bulky, dynasty-looking jewellery.
Yeah. I mean, Belinda Lang still looked good because Belinda Lang, gorgeous woman.
Yeah,
but
she'd be hard pushed to look anything other than good, I think, wouldn't she?
Yeah, even with the St. Bernard thing on. And the other thing was, I don't know if you picked up on this, but Ralph was in his usual attire, except he had a dicky bow.
Did he? Oh,
he had a dicky bow for his night out. Yeah, he'd made the effort and wore exactly the same clothes he always wears, except when he's dazzling Darren, but with the dicky bow.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. So if you're liking what we're doing, follow us at SADDO Podcast on Twitter and Instagram, where we post rare photos and videos on Dear John, Fawlty Towers, The Good Life and more.
We have a Facebook page that you can find by searching SADDO Podcast, and we also have a growing Facebook group that you can join and contribute to discussion or memes, rarities, anything that you might find yourself. Subscribe to our newsletter by visiting our website, saddo.club, where you can also get more information about us, read the blogs, share us a coffee, and listen to episodes if you don't do podcast apps. You can also watch the original episodes that we discuss on our episode notes pages, or take our super tricky Good Life and Fawlty Towers quizzes. Get in touch, email us at saddopodcast@gmail.com, subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from.
So, just before we finish then, I guess we need to pick an MVP from this one.
Well, it's not Louise.
No, I've got written down here, Louise and Kirk are the anti-MVPs because they were so horrible. I almost want to deduct previously awarded MVPs from them pair of pricks.
To knock them a point off each.
Yeah, definitely not them. So who did you go for?
I've gone for John this week.
Yeah, me too.
I've gone for John just because...
He's so easy to go for, isn't he?
Yeah. In previous weeks, I've struggled to sort of think about John as being the good guy that we hoped he would be. But this week, I do think for his empathy and his care and his love for just wanting Toby to be his mate. He just wants Toby to be his friend. And despite the fact they hid under the table from Kirk, which is quite understandable.
Totally understandable, yeah. And he also lost his temper with the group, but I'd sympathise with him there too.
I could see where he was coming from.
Yeah.
For me this week, it's definitely John.
I kind of wanted to give it to Ralph for his dicky bow and his line about what about the ballroom? But no, yeah, John, definitely. John must be streaming ahead at this point.
I think so. He has his off days, but he's the usual one, isn't he?
With 4 episodes to go, do you know who's not even had a vote yet?
Kate.
Yeah. And it's weird because we love Belinda Lang and she does a great job, but she's not had an MVP yet in this series.
I might have given it to her for the way she said wang twice in this episode. It was a really over-exaggerated wang.
Surprised that you haven't given it to her for calling Kirk a dickhead in the past, because you love that, don't you?
I do. I like it when she refers to him as a dickhead. Next week, we are up to Series 2, Episode 4. Do you know what the episode's called for next week, Ben?
I do. It is called Sanctuary.
Oh, that sounds like it's calming, pleasant. I bet it's not, though, is it?
Not really. No, it's not. No, I think John's having some success with women for once in his life, but he ends up having to change his plans because Ken requires sanctuary from Marlene, who's on the warpath.
Bloody Ken again.
Yeah, he's a tit, isn't he? It's good that Sue Holderness is back.
Yes.
Like her.
Excellent.
So yeah, we'll deep dive that one for you next week. Before we go this week, we've got a bit of a recommendation for you. There's the Goon Show pod, if you're into the Goons.
Ooh.
Do you like the Goons, Al?
I like the Goons. I catch them on Radio 4 Extra in the UK.
Well, there's a great podcast you can listen to. I mean, there's so many. The podcast world is overly saturated and we contribute to that. We know that. But if we figured that there might be some people who listen to this, given that it's a sitcom podcast, who also would be into the Goons. So it's a really good podcast and it kind of deep dives all of the Goon stuff. So yeah, get stuck into that. It's called the Goon Show pod. And we'll see you next week for Series 2, Episode 4, Sanctuary. I'll see thee.
Yeah.
Dear John, by the time you read these lines, I'll be gone. Life goes on. Right or wrong, now it's all been said and done, dear John. Seems we've sung love's last song, dear John.